Hi everyone, for today's lesson, we are going to learn about angle pair relationships. This topic is going to take us all the way until the end of this unit, and we are only on day 1. We will have 4 days talking about angle pair relationships. Our I can statements for today are for you to be able to say, I can identify angle pairs that are formed by intersecting lines. Before we get started, please make sure that you have the following materials. First of all, you're going to need to make sure that you have the cutouts ready to go for our lesson for today. You will need to make sure you have something to write with, scissors if you have not already cut out the cutouts for our interactive notebook. You will need a glue stick or some tape, and I would always recommend having colors with you so that you can have some highlight for emphasis. All right, before we get started, we have ourselves a definition, a new vocabulary word. And that vocabulary word is a transversal line. A transversal line. And a transversal line is simply a line that intersects two or more lines. So a transversal line is a line that intersects two or more lines. Being able to recognize a transversal line is going to be very, very important. What I'm going to do is draw a really quick sketch of two lines. And I'm going to draw a transversal line. And a transversal line is simply the line that intersects two lines. This is considered our transversal line. It intersects two lines. Because transversal lines intersect two other lines, what ends up happening is angle pairs are created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a picture of two lines that are intersecting. And we'll sketch this a couple of more times as well with a transversal line. And I would like you guys to please go ahead and draw this and label these angles as follows. Angle 1, 2, 3, and 4. So make sure that your angles match my angles. Then we have angle 5, 6, 7, and finally number 8. So all of these angles, angle 1, 2, 3, and 4, are around one line that the transversal crosses. Angles 5, 6, 7, and 8 are along a second line that the transversal cuts through. So these angles that correspond to the first line and the angles that correspond to the second line, they are related to each other because they share the same transversal. Because they share the same transversal, there exists angle pair relationships. And so what I would like you guys to please do is go ahead and take out the cutout that says corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, and consecutive interior angles. And please go ahead and glue this directly into your notebook. The first one that we have is corresponding angles. And corresponding angles are angles that have similar positions. So they have similar positions with respect to our transversal. So some examples of corresponding angles would be like angle 1 and angle 5. both angle 1 and angle 5, they are in the upper right or upper left corner of our transversal intersection. So the intersection between the transversal line and the line that the transversal crosses through. So let's go ahead and call this transversal line line T, and we'll call the others M and N, and that might be helpful for reference. So angle 5 and angle 1 would be considered. So I'm going to say angle 1 and angle 5. They are considered corresponding angles. Angle 2 and angle 6 are in the same relative position, and they are considered corresponding angles. So angle 2 and angle 6. Angle 3 and angle 7, they are both in the bottom right corner of the intersection of the transversal line. Angle 3 and angle 7 are considered corresponding angles. And finally, angle 4 and angle 8, both are in that bottom left corner of the intersection between the transversal line and the line that the transversal crosses through. So angle 4 and angle 8. They are in the same relative position. So I'm going to draw a really quick sketch. And what I'm referring to are angles that are in the same relative position. Those are called corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are always on the same side of the transversal. So I'm going to write that down. They're on the same side of the transversal. Same side. Let's talk about alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles. Alternate means on different sides or to flip-flop. So that's alternate. So I'm going to think of like flip-flop. Alternate, different. Interior. Interior means between or on the inside. Alternate interior angles. So alternate interior angles are angles between the two lines on opposite sides of the transversal. So once again, they are angles that are between two lines on opposite sides of the transversal. So if you think about these two lines, what's between is we're referring to angles 3, 4, 5, and 6. These angles are on the inside or interior between the two lines, and they are along the transversal. Alternate interior angles are angles that are in between and yet are on opposite sides of the transversal. So angles that are between two lines on the opposite side of the transversal. Alternate interior angles form diagonals. So that's another thing I want you to know. I want you to think about it being along a diagonal. In this case, the alternate interior angles are the angles that are between the two lines on opposite sides of the transversal along a diagonal would be angle 4 and angle 6, angle 3 and angle 5. 4, 6, 3, 5. So angle 4 and angle 6, angle 3 and angle 5. They are along a diagonal. So that is a key word right here, a diagonal. So if you were to draw a really quick sketch of alternate interior angles, They are on opposite sides of the transversal along a diagonal. I'm going to zoom in so that you can actually see the picture that I quickly sketched. So I'm talking about like this angle and this angle. They form a diagonal on the inside. Alternate exterior angles also are along a diagonal, but alternate means on different sides of the transversal. Exterior means on the outside. So we're referring to 1, 2, 7, and 8. They're on the outside of the two lines. Alternate exterior angles are angles outside of the two lines on opposite sides of the transversal. I also want you to think about diagonals whenever you think of alternate. Alternate. Think diagonal. So our alternate exterior angles along a diagonal on the outside would be angle 1 and angle 7, angle 2, and angle 8. They are alternate exterior angles. So I'm going to write angle 2 and angle 8, angle 1 and angle 7. Alternate exterior angles are on the outside of a transversal line, and they form a diagonal. So these two angles would be considered alternate exterior angles. And finally, we have consecutive interior angles. Consecutive means one right after another. Interior means on the inside. Consecutive interior means one right after the other on the inside. So one right after another, consecutive interiors would be 4 and 5 and 3 and 6. Consecutive interior angles. They are located between the two lines but they are on the same side of the transversal. So once again, they are located between. So on the inside, consecutive interior, between two lines, but they are on the same side of the transversal line. I think the word I want to emphasize right here is similar positions. They are angles that have similar positions for corresponding. Consecutive interior, they are on the same side of the transversal line, but they're on the inside. So in this case, it would be 4 and 5, 3 and 6. So how on earth are you going to remember these? That's a lot of vocabulary words. So let me go ahead and try to make this as simple as possible. We have C words and we have A words. The C words, corresponding and consecutive interior, corresponding angles and consecutive interior angles. The C word angles are on the same side of the transversal. And the A words, the aid word angles, are on different sides of the transversal. For A words, I always want you to think diagonal. Alternate. And they're going to be on different sides, interior and exterior angles. Always think of a diagonal. So they're going to be on alternating sides of a diagonal. I forgot to draw a picture up here for consecutive interior, so I want to make sure that I draw consecutive interior angles. The consecutive interior angles that I would be referring to would be these two angles. They would be consecutive interiors. So we have A word angles and C word angles. The corresponding angles, they're the ones that are in a similar position with respect to the intersection of the line and the transversal. Alternate interior are both between, but we're talking about angles that form a diagonal. Alternate exterior angles are angles that are on the outside of the two lines, but they are diagonals they're angles that form a diagonal on the outside. And finally, consecutive interior. They are on the same side of the transversal, but between the two lines intersected by the transversal. All of these angles are along the same transversal, and so that is something that I want you guys to keep in mind. We just have one more example, and I would like you guys to please go ahead and paste this on the inside of your notebook. I have to go into the next page. And what this is it's a quick example, because not all pictures are going to be super, super easy. Sometimes they have multiple transversal lines. So the ones I gave you at the very beginning had only like one transversal line. Sometimes you might have many. So I'm going to talk to you guys about a strategy for making sure you understand when to view which transversal line. So for letter A, what we want to do is we want to identify the transversal lines. So the transversal lines are all of the lines that intersect more than one line. So let's go ahead and analyze this. Does a P intersect more than one line? Yes, it does. P is considered a transversal line, line P. Is Q, 1, 2. Q intersects two lines, so Q. And R intersects two lines. Letter A intersects two lines. Letter B, line B, intersects two lines. Line C intersects two lines. And line D intersects two lines. So all of the ones where it intersects more than one line, that's considered a transversal. What we want to do next is we want to look at all of the angles that are corresponding angles. I'm just going to work with picture number 1, and with picture number 2, we are going to do this one in class. So be prepared to answer those questions. So we'll do that one in class. Let's go ahead and look at this one. So we have identifying pairs of corresponding angles. So all of these angles are along the same transversal line of R. So let's just identify R as the transversal line. Remember that corresponding angles, those are the angles that are in the same position. So angle 1 and angle 3 are in the same position with respect to the transversal line. So angle 1 and angle 3, they are corresponding angles. Angle 2 and angle 4 are in the same relative position. So I'm going to write angle 2 and angle 4. Angle 5 and angle 7 are in the same position. So I'm going to say angle 5 and angle 7. And finally, angle 6 and angle 8 are in the same position of the intersection between the transversal line and the line that it's formed with. So angle 6 and angle 8. We want to identify all pairs of alternate interior angles. So interior angles means that we're just looking at between these two angles, and they have to form a diagonal. 6 and 3 would form a diagonal. 2 and 7 would form a diagonal. So our pairs are angles 6 and angle 3, angle 2 and angle 7. So they form a diagonal. We want to identify all pairs of alternate exterior angles. So all pairs of alternate exterior angles, that means that they are on the outside. So we're only focused on 1, 5, 4, and 8, and they would form diagonals. 1 and 8 would form a diagonal. 5 and 4 would form a diagonal. 1, 8, and 5 and 4. So I'm going to write angle 1 and angle 8 are alternate exterior angles, and angle 5 and angle 4 are alternate exterior angles. Finally, we want to identify pairs of consecutive interior angles. Consecutive interior angles are on the inside of the transversal, and they are on the same side of the transversal. So 2 and 3 are on the inside and the same side. 6 and 7 are on the inside and the same side of the transversal. So 2 and 3, 6 and 7. And that is the end of today's lesson. If you have any questions over anything that I just talked about today, please make sure that you email me. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day.